Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the RuneQuest rules by Chaosium Incorporated. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. Strong language, mature scenes, and rune magics are on the way. As this is our Glorantha, we will remind listeners that it may vary from the one you already know and love. And now, on to the show. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Old Ways Podcast, a special episode where we are going to sit down and do a little RuneQuest character creation with our friend Stefan. More on that later. For now, I'm going to get you introduced to the people who will be at our table. I am normally your keeper or handler or even storyteller, Michael, but we also have some other folks with us. So to my right.
Hi, this is Heather. And while you might know me from other ones, I am here to learn about Glorantha.
Yep.
This is Jake, and I'm very excited to learn about Glorantha. I don't know anything about it, so it'll be fun.
Absolutely. And last, but of course, most certainly not least, the man of the hour leading us through this, and that would be Stefan. So give us an introduction, if you would.
Hi, I'm Stefan, and I guess tonight I get to be Glorantha. So
Pretty much.
I hope you will enjoy the trip.
Okay. So if you can, give us let's say, maybe a broad brushstrokes of the world of Glorantha. We don't have to dive, of course, too deep, but just give us a summation of it so that way the folks who've never played RuneQuest or never read about Glorantha have sort of an idea about where we are and some analogs.
Certainly. So Glorantha is a fantasy setting created by the late Greg Stafford, at this point just around 50 years ago initially. It is a fully spiritual and magical setting in that everything in the setting has a mythological base. So, for instance, as opposed to a physical base that most settings that we're used to working in has. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if you were to get sick, that's not because you have contracted some biological ailment or there is some imbalance within you. No, it's because there is a specific illness spirit that has possessed you. So the treatment for being sick is that you go to a suitably puissant shaman to drive the sickness out of you, rather than going to somebody competent in medicine to put you back together.
Sure.
And that pervades the entire world. We're going to concentrate on a particularly mythically important area of one of the two continents that make up Glorantha. There's the continent of Genetala, which has a problem in that the god Gnert that represents that continent is in fact dead. So that's a problem. There's another continent to the south called Parental that has a thriving living god that is a far more vibrant landscape than the area we are in. We're going to concentrate the action to an area in central Genetala, commonly known as Dragon Pass. It is a gap between two fairly major mountain ranges that run down the continent pretty much north to south. Mm-hmm. The gap is there, and it's about 40, 50 kilometers wide, because there is a valley left behind when one of the great dragons decided to fly off and go elsewhere. Dragons in Glorantha are basically mountain range sized.
Wow. Okay. Good to know.
And are part of the original mythical beings. I think the best thing to do is to give a quick historical summary of what has happened up until the point that we put the camera onto the characters.
Certainly.
At the start, when everything was created, there was no time. It was an era of peace and glory known as the Golden Age.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was glorious underneath the rule of the Emperor Yelm, the Sun King, who had an ecclesiastical court divided up into 7 regimented layers. Then there were the people who walked around on the grubby earth that nobody really cared about because all the important business was occurring in the bureaucracy of the 7 layers of Imperial Heaven. One might imagine something akin to maybe Shinto China as an analog. It's sort of that structure. Then one day there appeared on the scene a set of deities known as the Storm Deities. Now, the sun was married to the earth, so Yelm is married to Analda in using the names of the gods. And there comes a time when Umath, the primal storm, comes around and realizes that he's a god, but he doesn't have anywhere to be a god of. So he walks up and tears apart Yelm and Analda, creating the sky, or the middle air, that he then occupies and plays with all the winds. And he creates his own family of gods within that space, one of which that we're going to probably hear quite a lot of, because he's the major deity of the land of Sartar, which is the locale within Dragon Pass that we're looking at, known as Orlanth, takes the title of the Lord of the Middle Air. And he's a fairly impetuous fellow at the best of times, to say the least. And he doesn't take well to being told what to do in regimented life. So he's a little bit upset with the regiment and the regime of the Emperor Yelm and so forth. Meanwhile, in the background, there's this little fellow called Ermal the Trickster, who has managed to get his hands on a new toy, the sword known as Death, and has given it to Orlanth as a keep it safe, dear brother.
I can't see any problems here.
Yeah.
Before he does this, he has gone away and killed the being known as Grandfather Mortal, which is why all the mortal races die, because their progenitor mythically was killed by death. Hence, it is the doom of every mortal to eventually die. Things go downhill. Orlanth decides that he has this thing for Analda, but Analda is married to Yelm, even though they've been ripped apart. He doesn't let that stop him. He goes out, woos her with the great and mighty deeds, and there's a big whole arc of that. Net effect is there gets to be a contest in the throne room of the Emperor between Yelm and Orlanth, and it's a traditional best out of 3. It's poetry, it's archery, I forget offhand what the third one is, but basically Yelm completely wipes the floor with Orlanth, who, being embarrassed in front of everybody, including Analda, gets a little bit hot-headed, pulls out the sword Death, and sticks Yelm through the throat, thereby killing the Sun Emperor. Cosmologically speaking, I think this falls under the maybe not a good idea situation. So what now happens is Glorantha itself is now plunged into darkness because Yelm now has to go down into the underground and be dead. So he goes down into the hells and leaves Glorantha dark, cold, and barren. Orlanth goes off and marries Analda, and it doesn't take long before the cracks in the universe start to appear, because the order of things has just completely disappeared. And this force called chaos starts to seep into the universe from outside. Chaos is the preternatural, raw, antimatter firmament of everything. It's just pure, utter destruction incarnate. And as cracks start to appear in Glorantha, chaos starts to seep in, and for the people on the ground, this is an absolute catastrophe, obviously. Civilizations start to break apart. Meanwhile, down in the underground, there has lived since the start this race of ancient being known as the Trolls, or the Uz. They are tied to the Darkness Rune. They now have a problem because they now have this glaring sun down with them that is exceedingly inimical to them. So they're driven up onto the surface, where they're now forced to coexist with the plant spirits, or the Aldriami, as well as the rock people, the Mostali, or the dwarves, and all of humanity and the other races, including the dragons. Needless to say, this just gives rise to a great amount of two races, one piece of land problems, of which we're fairly familiar in modern times. So that's going on. The gods are meanwhile in an uproar, having infights of their own, trying to take their own sides. And it just so happens that the entirety of Glorantha at this point is held together by a big spike of true stability, absolute law, something known as True Stone. And things get so bad that at one point, this thing just explodes. So it just so happens that the spike transfixes Glorantha through the middle, which is where the major ocean is. So where the major ocean between the two continents is now fundamentally a big black hole. This, of course, causes a lot of water to start falling into said black hole. This is a problem because now all the oceans of Glorantha are going to be drained unless something happens. And fortunately, something does happen in that all the river spirits jump on board and start flowing into this big hole that's known as Magasta's Pool, or the space where Magasta, the ocean god, used to be. And that is why all rivers, with only a couple of known exceptions, flow into the sea, because they're constantly trying to refill the never-ending drain. The point up until then is known as the Lesser Darkness. We now enter the Major Darkness. Everything is bad on a cosmic scale, and things just go from bad to worse to horrible. And even Orlanth realizes that he actually went a little bit too far in killing Yelm, the Sun God. So he goes out and takes a group of fellow compatriots and forms a group of 7 and sets off on a quest to put Yelm back into the heavens. It is a mighty undertaking that takes... Time doesn't exist at this point, but there are several stops along the way. Each of the 7 have their chance to shine during those stops, because without any one of them, they would have been lost forever. They manage, in the end, to bring back Yelm to an event that's called the Dawn. as they bring Yelm back and put him back in the Sky Chariot, there appears across Glorantha this spider web that starts to pull all the fractious parts of Glorantha back together in a sort of duct tape manner, but at least it's something. That is also the birth of the concept of time. Basically, the gods realize as a group that if Glorantha is to survive, they cannot directly walk Glorantha. They have to act through their god talkers and their priests and their worshippers. They have to separate from mortal beings. And in order to do that, they come up with this great compromise known as time. And that is the start of history, as it were. Now, even though time starts, the events before time have, of course, still occurred. This is a mythical world, so they still have an influence on the world. So, because Yelm was dead, now that time is a thing, he has to spend half his time in the underworld, and he can spend half his time in the sky.
So one could argue that Orlanth gave us night and day.
Yes. The cycle of creation to almost destruction, but saved at just the last moment, continues so that the calendar in Glorantha has 5 seasons, starting with sea season, which is the everything is great, everything is green, everything is wonderful, the birds are singing, la-di-da. That gives way to fire season, where Yelm gets to be his total thing and burn everything to a crisp, practically, at least in Genetella, because unfortunately, during the Greater Darkness, Genert was killed by chaos. The rumor is that a group of chaotically tainted stone men, /dwarf/Mastali, brought chaos-infected armor into his court and basically blew it up. So we have sea season, we have fire season, we then have earth season, which is sort of akin to autumn in our terms, but it's also the sort of the big growth season and ends up with a harvest and so forth. At the end of earth season, all the earth goddesses die because they were pretty much eradicated during the Greater Darkness. Which of course then leads into dark season, which is basically winter on a Fimbulwinter scale. Winter in Glorantha is, and especially in the area of Dragon Pass with the big mountains, what happens is that there is a cold wind to the north known as Valind that is fighting against Orlanth and his family, who normally live just to the south of the pass. And as those two gain the upper hand or not depends on, is it more winter-like or is it more summer-like? Dark season, there is practically no Orlanth. Valind has reign of the place. The trolls love it. And then there is, following that is storm season, which doesn't really have a colliery in our sense, but it's when the storms, the middle air gets its chance to do its thing. Now, as one can imagine, in a tempestuous place such as Dragon Pass, storm season is it's an interesting time to be out on the road. And then comes a couple of weeks known as Sacred Time, which is the reset, the dawn, the start of history. It's when all the rites are done throughout Glorantha to reset the clock, and if all goes well, you start again next year in a better and happier place. If things don't go well, you're on a slippery slope. So there is an event during Sacred Time in the culture of Sartar in Dragon Pass, which is known as the I Fought, We Won war. Basically, just before the dawn, chaos is everywhere. Everybody who can even vaguely wield a weapon is fighting for their life. And it's the combination of everybody fighting for one cause that provides the mythic power that allows Orlanth to force into being the compromise amongst the gods and create time. And that's celebrated during Sacred Time by recreating I Fought, We Won. So there is one particular day during this 2-week period where mythically everybody who is a worshipper of any standing ends up fighting some form of chaos. And if the majority succeed, it's all good. If the majority fail, well, that hasn't happened yet, but it's not believed to be good.
I can't imagine so. So we're going to start our journey in Sartar?
Indeed. In the land of Sartar, in the region of Dragon Pass. Most specifically so, we're going to start some time back from the current crop of characters, in that we're going to start in the time of your grandparents, because we want to find out what has made an impact on your character, causing them to be what they are. For those that have the book, this is page 28 of the main rule book. And basically, the first thing we need to do is to pick which one of the 8 of your grandparents, if my math is correct, is your most significant grandparent.
Okay.
And that's a free choice. And if you're looking on the Roll20 character sheet, on the folio character sheet, there is a family history section.
Yep. I see that tab at the top near the center.
So yes, the first thing to do is to work out, are you matrilinear, are you patrilinear, are you some mix? What type of family are you? And culturally, you could be any.
We had kind of talked about before getting into the session tonight that we were going to sort of come from the same tribe.
Indeed. The characters are all based out of a village called Londros, which is on a river plain, and at the time of the grandparents is part of the Kolimar tribe, whose capital is about a day's march to the north, and that's called Clearwine. So named for the particular vines that make that particular area very famous, and it's a great earth cult center. So it has one of the major earth temples in the whole kingdom of Sartar.
Okay, so we just pick their occupation then?
Indeed. So yes, pick a grandparent and pick an occupation. You can choose freely or just roll.
We got to roll dice. We're
Right.
We got to roll dice, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to roll. I'm going to announce the occupation of my grandparent, and we're going to go to Heather and then to Jake next, so that everybody gets a little bit of a change up here. So here's the roll. So my grandparent we'll say grandfather was a priest.
Okay.
Ooh.
And I am going to be going for my grandmother. And the dice says a fisher.
Jake?
All right. My paternal grandfather, what is that? A bandit.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
We have a nice cross section of culture here. And so it looks like, from what I see here in the RuneQuest book, that we're going to do the same thing for our parent as the most dominant parent. Is that true?
Yes, although I'm going to hold off on that just a little bit, because we might find that there are some events that will occur before we get there.
Got it.
The current date is the start of the year 1625 solar time, or since time began. Solar time is what's used all throughout Glorantha, apart from the lands of Darahapa, which is the remains of the ancient solar kingdom or solar hierarchy up to the far north. They somehow count something like 17,000 years at the moment. Somehow they've managed to do that trick of tracking time back before time existed.
That's a trick, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So in 1561, your grandparent was born. In 1582, so when they were 21, there's two events that occur. One is that your parent or your parents were born, and the other is that the king of Sartar at the time and his wife, who at that time was the Feathered Horse Queen, who comes from an area just to the west of one of those major mountain ranges, went to war with the newly formed, at that point, Lunar Empire. Glorantha has this thing where not only does everything get reformed on a yearly basis, there's also a longer scale arc, which are called ages. Each age ends in some utterly cataclysmic event. The first age ended in about the year 6, and each is approximately 500 to 600 years long. So now that we're in the third age, there is this new goddess that has appeared in the Middle Air and is claiming the rights to the Middle Air. And she has her power center up in the north. And by 1582, she was starting to press southwards, as it were, to, obtain a warm water port, shall we say. So there is this big battle in which both the king and queen of Dragon Pass are killed. What we need to find out is, were your grandparents of note present at that battle?
Okay. I see the table on page 30.
Indeed. And in this case, particularly with Jake's grandparent being interesting.
That's a very that interesting is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
Right. It's carrying a heavy load.
Hey, someone has to be the bad boy.
Right.
He may not be from Sartar.
No, it's okay.
If we take the assumption that he is, then everybody just has +5 to a D20 roll, so D20 +5.
I think we should take the +5. We'll just assume that banditry did happen, and then somehow you got away with it.
Had to be different, didn't you?
All right, so I'll roll, and that is +5. So my grandfather was present at the Battle of Grizzly Peak.
All right, so let's see. Adding a +5. Ooh, mine was not. That was a 7.
+5, that's 17. So my grandfather was also present.
Yep. Conscripted, I bet.
Probably. Conscripted is another word for arrested and pressed into service.
Correct. You're a warm body. Here, hold this sword.
Well, I think this is why our priest gets a +5 on the next roll of what actually happened at the Battle of Grizzly Peak.
Oh boy. Okay, so this looks possibly very climactic here. So that is a 21, so...
Oh, you got 21.
Yes.
Grandparent... yes, your grandparent... Your priest's grandfather died with great glory defending the king and queen. This means that you have the honor passion and your choice of loyalty either to Sartar or the Feathered Horse Queen, depending on which one of the two. I would suggest Sartar.
Yeah, I think that's probably my first impression would be go with Sartar, the loyalty.
Because you have a famous ancestor, you get a 5% bonus to your orate skill. And also a D3 reputation.
Okay, D3. That's a 3.
Oh, yes, you're actually some people actually know you depending on which pub you go into.
Oh, that's nice. So if they're not present as far as Heather's character, Heather's ancestor goes, do we need to make any roll here?
No.
Okay. And then Jake's grandparent was there, so if you want to roll.
Yep. Oh, 17, which means I was also killed.
Yes, you basically managed to engender the requisite parent and then go off and get killed defending your mighty sire, as it were.
We our grandparents died side by side.
Likely, yes.
Yes.
No matter the title or the duty, we fell under the sword of death just like every other mortal.
Yes, I got 2 reputation.
Oh, there you go.
Ooh.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
So, having killed off the grandparents...
Except for Heather.
Oh, speak for yourself.
Right, yeah.
Well, almost. So, so we now switch to the parents and the grandparents and parents for Heather. So Heather gets 2 sets of this.
Ooh, fantastic.
We jump forward to the year 1597.
Yay. Okay.
When the next major event occurs, which is that lunar assassins have managed to infiltrate the Sartar royal house whilst they're in the Holy Country. Now, the Holy Country is down on the coast to the southwest. It is a highly civilized, well, comparatively highly civilized in Bronze Age terms, but we're talking Alexandrian Egypt versus rural Germania, I guess, which led to a whole cycle of murder and vengeance and revenge and so forth. Starting off with Mike's parents, I guess, or parent, I guess.
Okay. So we'll find out what happened to them, if anything, right?
Indeed.
So I guess my question to you is, does the noble bonus still apply here?
The parent doesn't necessarily have to pick the grandparent's profession. They can do.
I think they probably would, just to honor them. So that's a 16. So they fought in the Holy Country and survived.
Indeed.
Okay, so let's go 17. So looks like my grandmother fought in the Holy Country and survived.
She was running away from a couple of murderous lunar assassins, I think, across the border and managed to hide out, but got away.
Hey, she survived, in considering the time period and the standing of the country, and survival's not a bad thing.
Indeed. So we now move forward to where we do get some duality, I think. First of all, we've got to do one more roll for Grandparent in 1602.
Okay.
Which is when the Lunar Empire launched their great invasion of Sartar as a whole at incredibly high cost. They basically pushed their whole empire into financial ruin in doing this, but they are eventually successful. We'll come to that. They managed to take capital city of Boldholm, and one of the things in Boldholm is a living flame, which is called the Flame of Sartar, that was put there by the hero Sartar when he founded the country, and they managed to magically extinguish it. The mythic effect of this is, of course, that they break the country of Sartar. It's not a good time. Let's see how your grandmother is doing and if she was part of events. So it's a plus 10 to this roll.
Okay. So to make this interesting. Well, let's see. That's an 18 on the die, so we're adding a plus 10.
Okay, they're very definitely part of the overall final defense of Boldholm. So roll again with a plus 5.
That's a nat 20.
A nat 20. Oh, well, this is a good result. from the perspective of your character, because this means that everybody now has grandparents who have gone out in a absolute blaze of glory. But your grandmother dies gloriously on the walls of Baldholm as it's being overrun by the lunar invaders. I should mention that part of the reason why the Lunars are so successful in their campaign against Sartar is that they bring a lot of magic. They have whole regiments of magicians, and the Sartarites just aren't anywhere near organized enough to stand up against that. Mm-hmm. One of the things that is in the lunar arsenal at this time is a being called the Crimson Bat. This is a large demon, and by large we're talking village-sized.
Oh.
That is basically a chaos bat. Dozens of eyes, large leathery wings, that basically does nothing but feed on souls. The Lunars have a cult surrounding it, and the reason you become a member of the cult is that the bat will devour members of the cult only if there are not any non-members around to devour. Anybody devoured by the Crimson Bat is gone, revoked, KILLED, never existed, etc., etc., etc. Fortunately, that's not your grandmother's fate.
Yay!
Your grandmother is killed ordinarily, but bravely being part of the final stand of people at the main gate leading into Baldholm before it is completely overrun. You also gain honor.
Okay.
You get devotion to a deity of your choice. You get hate of the Lunar Empire as a passion. And you also get a D3 reputation.
That's 2.
Not to be sneezed at. As a sort of general idea, if you're within your own clan, then you're generally at 5 times your reputation score to be more or less immediately recognized. If you're inside your tribe, that's 3 times.
Okay.
So we move on to the parents and the events during the invasion year. So 1603, 1604. The Lunars are in charge. They're keeping the various Sartar tribes, of which there are approximately a dozen, basically occupied in fighting each other rather than fighting them, the occupiers. We go back and we get a chance for people's parents to have a role on the table, all at +5.
Alrighty. Get us started.
Giving birth to the characters.
Okay, roll once for the entire period, it says.
Yep.
That is a 1. That's a normal year.
So a 6. So it's perfectly normal.
Oh, right, because there's the modifier. But it's still a normal year.
Yep. Nothing of just usual cattle raids and incursions of chaos and...
That is a 5. So yes, and yet another normal year.
No, you had 5.
Oh, well, 5 plus 5, so 10. Dang it. I tried.
Having given birth to our proto-hero, your mother sadly is... Let's have a see what happens. Let's see what page 35 has to say. If you were to roll just a straight D20.
And that is a nat 20.
Ooh. That's interesting. That is killed in a magical ceremony.
Oh, goodness.
What I suspect happened to your mother, having just given birth, is during Sacred Time at the end of 1604, the tribe holds a ceremony to basically cause the river plains to flood come the start of sea season. It's calling to the river spirits to bring the waters to the land, to refurbish it and to refurnish it. Unfortunately, this year either they've failed to properly propitiate the Naimi river spirits, or they did things a little bit too well. In any case, your mother ends up being drowned in the event. Whether you wish to make use of that in sort of furtherance of the character or not, I'll leave entirely in your hands.
All right, so that sounds like Jake then.
Okay, see what we get here. That is an 8 plus 5, so 13, and that means I survived despite widespread conflicts and feuds.
Also known as a normal Wednesday in Sartar. The tribes and clans of Sartar are very prone to get into feuds and arguments with each other. What happened after the dragon kill is that after some time, the people that would become the Sartarites started to repopulate from the south. And the Kolimar were one of the first tribes to resettle the area. They were one of the first 5. And of course, they come in, there's plenty of land, everybody goes off, chooses somewhere nice, and starts setting up and starts growing more and more successful. But then newcomers come in wanting their portion of land. Borders start to meet as things grow, tensions form. It's actually quite a common theme that a group of Carls from one clan will, especially if they happen to be a border clan, will go across to the pastures of the clan next door and liberate a few sheep or cattle and then take them back and rebrand them, gain a bit of wealth that way. As long as it's kept within sensible bounds, it's accepted and everybody just gets on with life. But every now and then things happen and you have 40 spearmen marching up the hill to meet another 40 spearmen because their grandmother said something about your Aunt Vera at Uncle Mike's funeral.
Been there.
Yeah.
I've also decided that he's going to take some of his grandfather's bushcraft and become a hunter instead, a more noble profession.
Very nice.
Okay, so where does that bring us to?
So that brings us down to the events of your lifetime. So we now shift the focus to your actual character. 1605 is, you're a few years old. The Lunars make a major thrust to invade the Holy Country, striking at the eastern portion of it. But their magical god king hands them their walking papers on a platter. He builds a magical wall enclosing basically the access point into Esrolia from Sartar that the Lunars bounce against. And also there is a large troll settlement right on the coast down on the south that Belintar forms an alliance with, basically trapping the Lunars in a pincer. 1605 is not a good year for the Lunars. Let's have a look at... This is now still your parents we're looking at.
Okay.
For those who have parents that are alive.
Yep. So far alive. So let's see here. I see that there's a -5 to this roll because I'm a Sartarite, or my father is.
Indeed.
All right. That appears to be a feint to the sea with that modifier. So my 16 becomes 11. And he fought in the feint to the sea campaign.
Indeed. So you were actually part of the the pincer portion to the sea. So,
Okay. And that subsequent table on the bottom we'd roll on?
yes.
Right. Does the -5 still apply, or is it a straight roll?
This point, it is your -5 still applies.
Okay. So he survives. That's
Okay.
1 to 17 is a survival, so that's pretty good for him.
Yep.
So, Jake, what happens to your character's father?
It is a normal year for me, for my father.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay. You actually get to just go raiding for cattle and so forth as opposed to...
Wasn't that nice?
It is nice.
Yes.
Okay. So I suppose that brings us back around again.
Yep. And we come up to 1608. At this point, having bounced against Esrolia and the Holy Country, the Lunar Empire decides to head... Sartar is centered on a big mountain massif known as the Quivens, and basically the fertile land around it. Initially, the Lunars went down the west side, heading down towards the Holy Country and Esrolia. They bounced. So they now go down to the east. The east is a far less hospitable place. They come into an area known as Prax, which is basically a rocky desert, on the far side of which there is one big river with a fertile river delta. So one can imagine sort of Egypt. They go for that, thinking, okay, if we couldn't go to the west, we'll try to push through to get to the sea on the east. They were basically harried all the way, and the local peoples, the nomads who go from oasis to oasis within that desert landscape, were able to basically push away the regular military invasion that tried to use regular tactics in a desert. For those whose parents are around, it's a regular D20 for Sartorites.
All right. Let's see what we get. That is a 16, which means my father fought in the first invasion of Prax.
Ooh, indeed. So you get to roll again on the next table.
Yes, I get to see what happened to him. And so that is him having witnessed the lunar submission to the Pap priestesses.
Ooh, okay. So basically, in the middle of this desert area is a green area known as the Paps. It is the underground home of the earth deity of the region, who's known as Erythra. And that area is known as the Paps. So it's the Lunars end up basically surrendering to the priestesses of the earth of Prax, which means that you get the chance, you get the free devotion to deity of your choice, which we'll come to.
Sure. Okay. So then I suppose we figure out what happened with Jake's father.
Indeed.
Okay. Ooh, that is 19. So I also...
Nice.
My father also fought the first invasion of Prax. 1, survived numerous ambushes, gained hate Praxians.
Indeed. So the Praxians are the locals of the area, which, they're underhanded, they're sneaky, they have no honor.
At least that's what you think.
Right.
Indeed. So we'll jump through here and continue through the invasion, so into 1610. And we're getting there. So at this point, the Lunar Army, now under new management, there's a new general, because the last one kept bouncing. But this time, properly prepared, goes back into Prax and blows away the nomads and captures the one great city on the river, known as Pavis. At the same time, in the kingdom to the north of Sartar, known as Tash, one of the lunar superheroes, or heroines, I should say, Jariel the Raceress, liberates the pro-lunar king and ends him, transcends his, lets him transcend his mortal coil and sends him to glory. Although she then gives birth to his son, who's called Ferandros, to continue on the line of the kingdom of Tarsh, but of course now firmly in the lunar pantheon.
Sure. Well, it looks like in these events, those of us who are Sardarites are going to take a bit of a penalty.
Yeah.
Indeed, you're at -5, so basically chances are you're not involved, but...
Yeah, that's okay. We'll see what happens. So that is a modified 12. So my father fought in the second invasion of Prax.
Ooh, wow, okay. Go for it.
All right, so is it simply just the King Liberation table below there, or is it the second invasion table?
It's the second invasion table.
All right, let's see. So that's a 4, so he survives the second invasion of Prax.
Yeah, that's just a... Meanwhile,
I had another normal year.
Has a normal year.
Yeah.
Perfect. Which means we get to jump forward a few years to 1613, which is for your tribe, or your clan in particular, a very, very big year. Because outraged by the Lunar's presence and spurred on by the social unrest, the Sartorites rebel in strength and temporarily expelled the Lunar army out of Baldholm. In fact, out of the mountains in the center, the Quivens.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lunars regroup, and the prior war grizzled general comes back and takes command, good old Fassa Widered, and deals the rebels a sound thrashing with particularly with his magical units. As a result, Fassa Widered is now made Governor General of Dragon Pass. So we'll go for the events, and then we'll come to the specific clan event.
Okay, so I get +5 to this roll. That's a 22. So my father fights in Starbrow's Rebellion.
Indeed. Which makes perfect sense.
He's basically fought in every other battle,
Right.
So why wouldn't he be there?
Indeed. And just to be clear, Cullier Starbrow came out of the Collimar. So at the time this happens, the leader of the rebellion is from your tribe.
Nice. Okay. So I should find out what happens to him in the rebellion.
Right. Indeed.
All right.
At +5.
That's 13, so 5, it's 18. So he aids Starbrow's escape. And
Yep.
it looks like gains loyalty and reputation.
Loyalty to Sartar. And more reputation.
Yeah. The D3 percentage, that's a 2. So that's 5 total so far in this character.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad. All right, Jake.
All right, let's see what my father was doing. That is a 13, so he also fought in Starbrow's Rebellion. And he was killed by lunar magic. Now I hate Lunar Empire.
Yep. The lunar magic in question is... They have a spell called Moonburn, which is basically calling down actual pieces of rock from the moon goddess where she sits in the middle air up in the sky. And they're basically meteorite strikes.
Oh, wow. It sounds like an epic death for your father.
Right?
Yeah. The good news is that his spirit wasn't destroyed by it, so he's still able to be worshipped in the yearly ancestral rites and so forth, but there wasn't really anything other than a smear left to bury.
Well, it's a cheap funeral service, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so
Indeed.
so if my memory here is right, that means that I have the only parent left.
Yes.
Indeed.
We'll see how long he lasts.
Oh, and welcome to the Lunar Hatred. Here's your membership card.
We jump all the way forwards to 1619.
Awesome.
At this point, the Lunar Army have come down not only the eastern side and the Praxian River Valley down from Pavis, they've also now started to move down the central mountain range. And there is one final holdout of Sartar in the sort of the southernmost citadel of Sartar, known as Whitewall, where King Broyan is holding out. King Broyan is a direct descendant from Orlanth, which may turn out to be important in a few years' time. But for now, let's see what happens here in 1619.
All right. So it does appear that Sartorites get 5 to this roll.
Yep.
I have a sneaky suspicion that the father who can't miss a meal or a fight is probably going to show up here in a battle. And I'm not wrong. It's an 18. So he fights in the Hendriking campaign. All right. So let's see what happens. That is a 7. So he survives that.
Indeed, which is somewhat amazing because part of what Vassar Wide Red brings into this campaign is yet again the Crimson Bat.
Yikes.
So we jump forward to 1620. The rest of Sartar and the land south are at this point completely occupied, but Whitewall still stands against everything, including the Crimson Bat so far. So at this point, you're on a straight roll, it appears.
Let's see what happens here. So that is a normal year.
What?
Yeah, I know. He's got to get a break at some point, right? Like he's got to calm down.
Absolutely.
He's a little tired.
But yes, we spring back up to 1621.
Okay.
1621 is a momentous year. In the east, a big cradle, literally a giant's cradle. So a boat that holds the baby of a giant, where the adult giant is approximately 120 meters tall, flows down the Solar Fell, which is the river to the east of Prax, all the way from the mountains in the north where the giants are, to the sea. The Lunar Army attempts to seize it, but they were thwarted by various defenders, one of which was a fellow by the name of Argrath. The Orlanthi defenders of Whitewall finally fall after 2 years of siege. Orlanth and Analda are proclaimed dead, and the Red Emperor, the god incarnate ruler of the Lunar Empire in the north, declares a full year of celebration. We shall see what happens. So go ahead and make the general event roll.
All right. So
which one do you happen to take part in?
The Great Winter, it seems.
Okay. So with the slaughter of the remaining direct descendant line of both Orlanth and so the ruler of the Middle Air, the god who's been who's one of their main jobs is keeping the Great North Wind at bay, and also Analda, the goddess of earth and fertility. The result is basically that there is a complete winterization of the entire area. Nothing grows. Cattle don't give birth to calves. There is a constant blizzard. Life is harsh. So this is what you get to roll on.
Oh, it sounds so fun. Okay. So evidently my father starves to death, making sure other people were fed.
Indeed. So family is a big thing in your family. So now we come back to the start to you and the year 1622, where basically Professor Wide Red is retired with honors, and yet another new young up-and-coming general in the Lunar Forces takes over, known as Tatius the Bright. becomes Governor General of Dragon Pass. Tatius the Bright is the head of the Lunar College of Applied Magics. It so happens that King Broyan re-emerges and go into rebellion, but at the same time, one of the big chaos nests in the area, known as Lance's Footprint, has a outspurting of lots of chaos monstrosities. Mostly in that area, it's what's known as Scorpion Men, which are, if you imagine a centaur, but substitute a horse-sized scorpion body for the horse part.
I think I've seen that bad CGI movie.
Right.
I think I've seen that movie.
I hope it looks better than the movie.
They're particularly horrendous things to fight. But fortunately, the rebel army manages to partially revive the worship of Orlanth and Analda just enough that the Great Wind is reborn and pushes back the Great Winter. Meanwhile, in Nestrolia, there's a coup d'etat and other civilized things going on, causing political chaos. So each of you now get to roll on the 1622 events table at +5.
Fantastic. Let's see what happens to us. That is a 20, which means I fought in the Battle of Anarach Hills.
Ooh,
Heather?
that is a good place to start. So you're still at +5.
You want me to continue then?
Yes, we might as well.
Yeah, that's fine. Still at +5. So I, 22, aided King Broyan in awakening Orlanth.
Jesus.
Oh.
Man.
Oh.
Yeah, definitely hero material here. Yes, this is good. This is good.
All right. I will take the 5% battle and devotion deity. I can imagine it's going to be Orlanth.
Yep. And then you get...
Looks like I gain a D6 percentage reputation.
Yes. And you get to roll on the Civil War table as well, but just as flat.
Well, I'm going to roll, so 4% reputation. So maybe some people outside that bar know me now. And then, okay, so and a roll on the Civil War table as well?
Yep, +5.
Yes.
+5. Okay, so I evidently fight gloriously protecting Queen Semistina from Red Earth assassins.
Ooh.
I'm all over the place.
Yep.
All right, so it's another D6 rep bonus, which is another 4.
Ooh.
All right. I think that is it for that year. So, Heather, take it away.
Oh, I'm supposed to follow up from that.
Yeah, you got to follow this. That's the way it goes. You got to follow this.
Oh, hey, I get to roll again. Yay.
Yay.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can follow up on that.
Do it. You can do it. I believe you.
So we got a +5. So that comes to 12. So Great Winter, year 2.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yes.
let's see. So I'm going to nearly die. How? Let's find out.
I know, indeed. But you're at flat.
Is that's the advantage of like right now? It's like we're not going to die. We can nearly
Right.
die
Yes.
I like that.
multiple times, but
Yeah.
there's no way we can die.
Let me tell you about the time I almost died.
It's not quite Traveler. I think we'd all be dead by now if it was Traveler. Okay, so Great Winter, year 2. Looks like this is just a straightforward roll.
Indeed.
And that is a 4 on the die. So I nearly froze to death. I roll a d6 because I joined the rebels and was fighting at the Battle of Auric Hills.
Nice.
Is that where I met you? Okay.
Could be.
It very well could be.
Yep.
So let's go to the Battle of Auric Hills. The next page. And another +5. All right. That's a 2 + 5, 7. So 7. I survived. I gained battle +5%.
Nice.
Yep.
So not as glorious, but I
Pretty good.
lived, I guess.
At least part there for part of it.
I was. It looks like that's about as far as she went. She made it through and went, phew, okay.
All right, let's see what
Yep.
my character is going to do. Great winner, year 2.
Mm.
Oh, look at that. I also rolled a 4, so I almost froze to death. And that's a 6, so I flee to Ezrolia and I fight in the Civil War in Ezrolia.
Nice.
Oh, so that's where you then meet. Yes, this
Yeah.
this makes perfect sense.
Okay,
We have a
that's-
consensus.
That's 15, so I survived and I take part in the Siege of Noshet in 1623.
In the next year. Okay.
Ah.
Nice.
So we'll use that as the segue into 1623. So the new Estrolian queen, Samastina, gains her new ally, King Broyan, and his ragged army of volunteers that arrives and defeats the Graceland Horse army that was fighting on behalf of the Lunars, the Feathered Horse Queen having been being killed soon after by her own bodyguards for failing to win a battle. Meanwhile, the Lunar army has arrived, besieges Esrolia and King Broyan in Notched, which is sort of the Alexandria equivalent, the big civilized capital in the southeastern part of Esrolia, right on the Circle Sea. Meanwhile, going back to the north and up in the area around Tash, a gigantic swarm of trolls, trollkin, insects, and darkness creatures crosses Dragon Pass en route to Castle Lead, which is sort of to the northeast of Sartar. It's, if you think of a triangle between the Quivered Mountains in the center of Sartar, Prax, Castle Lead is sort of the top of that triangle.
Okay.
So we might as well go back to Mike's character and see what they're up to.
All right. So that is a normal year.
Okay.
Well,
Heather.
let's see. So no, that is that is a 2. So yes, nice quiet year.
1623 is nice and normal so far. So what does Jake have in store for us to make all of this happen? Because we know that he's at the siege.
Yeah.
So he goes straight to the siege. Do not pass go.
So I rolled a 25 with my +5.
Ooh.
That means I am blessed by Queen Samastina. I gain loyalty, Queen Samastina. Add 5% to battle skill. Gain 1d6 times 100 lira worth of gifts from the Queen, which is 300.
Nice.
And 1d3 reputation, which is 1. And I'll take part in the Battle of Pennell Ford in 1624.
Next year. Because you are part of Queen Samastina's honor guard at this point.
Hello, sugar daddy.
This is probably a good point to quickly discuss the monetary system in the general Sartar Holy Country lunar region.
Mm-hmm.
There's essentially 3 coins. There's a lead coin, sometimes called a clack, sometimes called a bolg. There are 10 of those to a silver coin. If you're from Sartar, you know silver coins as guilders. If you're from the Lunar Empire, you know them as lunars. So the L in this case happens to be lunars, but it could just as easily have been a capital G for guilders.
Okay.
A silver coin is enough to feed 1 person for a week in your regular sort of farming stead community.
Mm-hmm.
To give you an idea of value. There is then also a gold coin, also called a sun wheel, or just wheel for short, which is equivalent to 20 silver coins.
See, that's what we got to be looking for.
Yeah.
So we jump ahead to 1624. And yet again, it's an eventful year. A new planet has appeared in the sky. Obviously, prophesying all sorts of things depending on who you are. a superhero known as Harak the Berserker and his wolf pirates. Also the White Bear of White Bear and Red Moon fame arrives in the Holy Country, having circumnavigated the world after finishing off rescuing the Cradle back in 1621. They ally with the good side, i.e. Samestino and Broyan, as far as we're concerned, and help rout the Lunar Army. This causes Orlanth finally to be freed from the underworld, and a new constellation known as Orlanth's Ring reappears with additional stars and quickly goes to the top of the sky. So Orlanth is not only back, he's back with a vengeance. One of Harak's companions, one Argrath, goes to the borders of Sartar and Prax and summons a Praxian demigod, Jaldan Goldentooth, proclaiming Argrath as a Praxian demigod in his own right. So he goes off to liberate Pavis with all the Praxians and help kick the Lunars back out of Prax eventually. Meanwhile, Harak and Broyan go off to the southeast to sack and plunder the coast. Particularly, there is a magical city known as the City of Wonders that, they're pirates. They like sacking things. So they go down the coast sacking as they go. The final part is that for the last 11 years or so, there's been a lunar puppet king in Boldholm, King Temetane. He is assassinated by a group of Humakti, so followers of the god of death.
Okay, so we should find out what happens to us.
Absolutely.
All right. That's 17. I think I'm going to see Jake at that Battle of Panel Ford. We keep running into each other.
Yeah.
Might as well see what happens. You're at plus 10 on this roll.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. It can't go over 20, right?
Correct.
So I fought with great glory. I gained honor and devotion to... Is that any deity or just the deity of
any deity, yeah. Honor or devotion is a choice in this case.
Or devotion. Okay, so we'll say devotion, I think. And we'll continue with our Orlanth theme.
Yep.
And then I add 10% to battle. And gain 1d6 reputation. That is a 1. So 1 reputation. And I get to pick whether I accompanied Argath to Jaldan Goldentooth being summoned, or aided Harak the Berserk in sacking the City of Wonders. I think I'm going to sack the City of Wonders.
Excellent choice.
It seems right. So that table in the RuneQuest book is right below it.
Indeed.
This looks like it's just a flat roll.
Yep.
Let's see if I get betrayed and robbed by wolf pirates. That is... Evidently, I stole a magic item.
Ooh, nice.
Oh.
Ooh.
I roll 3d6 plus 2 on the family heirlooms table on page 83. So we zip down there to 83 really quick and finish this out.
Well, you get to roll it as 3d6 plus 2 because it's a different distribution.
I have enough d6s for all of you. All right, so that is 3d6 plus 2.
Yep.
Okay, so that is a 12. So an awakened small animal, such as a cat, lizard, or bird.
Very Orlanthy.
Yeah, I think bird is what I'd probably choose.
So yeah, and that actually plays in perfectly where you are geographically. Culturally, for the Orlanthi, putting a spirit into an awakened animal is a common enough occurrence that there are a few awakened animals in any given clanstead.
Mm-hmm.
And typically for Orlanthi, it tends to be cats, because Orlanth has a great kinship with Yinkin, the cat spirit. But just to the west of the lands of your clan is the great Sundome Temple of the Yelmalio worshippers, the guardians of the stead. Yelmalio was the one member of the Sky Court that got stranded on the ground at the start of the Lesser Darkness. And he had to keep guarding the stead and guard the stead no matter what, steadfastly believing that one day Yelm would return and everything would be all right again. And he was still around come the dawn. So they're basically, you can think of them as Greek hoplites.
Okay.
More or less. They're great when they're in units and they'll steamroller over just about anything. But they, being tied to the Sky Rune, use hawks particularly as their spirit animal. So given the geographical closeness, it's perfectly reasonable for you to have picked up some manner of spirit bird, whether it's something a bit more sparrowy or whether it's a bit more raptory.
Probably a bit more raptory, given how I see the character coming together. But the magic comes in many different sizes. Okay,
absolutely.
So, what happens to you, Heather?
I'm just hoping not for a normal year.
Yeah,
I want something to happen.
Well, I mean,
hey, when I can't die, I want something to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. So there's no modifier to this. So please. Oh, you son of a bitch. It was a normal year. It was a 9.
Well, somebody has to stay at home and actually make sure that the fields are planted and the animals are taken care of, and that everybody actually has food on the table, and that the various kids running around don't stab themselves too badly with the sharp swords.
Okay, well, I know that I'm fighting in the Battle of Parental Ford.
Indeed.
And that would also mean, with the 20 or above, that I fought with great glory, gained honor or devotion, add 10 to battle, 1d6 reputation. That is 4. And I think I am going to go with Argrath to seize Geraldine Golden Tooth Summit.
ooh,
That sounds good. Which is a straight D20.
That is an 18. I pledged undying loyalty to Argrath of the White Bull and to Geraldine Golden Tooth, and I gained devotion White Bull, loyalty White Bull.
Ooh.
At 70, and then I will take part in the liberation of Pavis next year.
Ooh, interesting.
very.
So we finally get to the current year. So Argrath liberates Pavis and is proclaimed king thereof, and then leads his Praxian allies back to Dragon Pass to try to kick the Lunars out of there, but he's not able to rout the lunar magics and gets kicked back to Pavis. Meanwhile, King Broyan is killed by lunar magics. There's sort of a theme here. Basically, the Lunar Empire has, behind the scenes, gathered thousands of magicians, priests, nobles, anybody who's everybody who's anybody, to consecrate a new temple of the Reaching Moon in Sartar. What this is, there is a magical presence of the extent of the control of the Lunar Empire, which is basically how far the red light from the lunar moon in the sky can reach over the ground on Genitalia. And the way that this range is increased is that they build temples to the Reaching Moon, which is a great magical undertaking that basically draws the light of the moon closer to them. This area that's encompassed is known as the glow line because it's a soft reddish glow when viewed from the outside. However, a group of Sartarite hero questers led by Callias Starbrow, well, she's back, invades the ceremony, and summons a true dragon beneath the temple just as it's about to be consecrated. This brown dragon devours the temple and the attendees in minutes. A good 80% of the military and magical might of the Lunar Empire in the provinces disappears in a gulp.
That's not a problem, right?
No.
No, not at all.
Politically perfectly explainable. So this true dragon rises up into the sky, revealing its impossible size. Several kilometers long. Flies up high in the middle air towards the red moon. Everybody across all of Genitalia gets to witness this. From the east to the west, they saw a dragon-shaped cloud obscure the red moon. For those further out, those closer in, so including yourselves, all are aware that a lot of the ancient draconic powers and thoughts that had been quiescent since the dragon kill and the end of the Empire of the Worm's Friends starts to wake up. In the lunar capital, the Red Emperor, the great god, sacrifices most of his magic and power to drive the dragon back before it brings the moon down. There was some severe scorching and claw marks left on the surface of the moon. The brown true dragon then spirals around Dragon Pass, circles Mount Kerofin, which is the Great Earth Mountain. It's almost a mini spike. The two mountain ranges that go side by side down either side of Dragon Pass top out at maybe 2,500 meters, 6,000 feet. Mount Kerofin is a single spike in the northwestern part of that range, which reaches up to approximately 12 to 15,000 meters.
Wow.
So 60, 70,000 feet. And then, having circled Kerofin, returns down into the hole which it had come from, and where the new lunar temple once stood. Meanwhile, Kalir, having taken care of the lunar problem, marches on bold home, proclaims herself Prince of Sartar. A small army led by General Fasser Wide-Red, who wasn't at the ceremonies because, of course, he'd been replaced by Tatius the Bright, who very much was in the center of the ceremonies, has an indecisive battle with Kalir's army, and they retreat after he learns that there is an uprising back up in Tarsh, where they had come from. Basically, there is a family feud between the Wide Reds and the family of King Ferandros. So when Wide Red's away, Ferandros takes the opportunity to go killing various people, and Wide Red has to run back to save the family. So there's great political upheaval.
Yes, and I see that there are some events for us to deal with this year.
Indeed.
Okay. So I don't see any Sartar modifier here, so it's a straight roll. And
it is a straight roll.
And just to let you know, Heather, it does seem that there aren't any just normal years here. This looks like it's going to be something for everybody.
Thank Orlanthus.
Well, you may, yes. Many times. Oh, interesting. I witnessed the dragon rise, and I survived. So I also participate in the liberation of Sartar.
And you now fear dragons.
It does seem that, and with good reason.
I mean, that makes sense.
And with good reason. With good reason. Okay, so liberation of Sartar. Again, a straight roll. That is an 11. So I witness Kalir Starbrow acclaimed as Prince of Sartar in Boltholm. I gain loyalty Sartar, and I add 5% to battle. More battle. We like that. All right. It's your time to shine, Heather.
I don't know about that, but as long as it's not a normal year, I'm okay. 2 of those in a row were just a little much. All right, let's see. We are going, that is a nat 20.
Ooh.
So I participated in the liberation of Pavis.
Ooh.
Which looks like that adds a +5. Excellent. Not a 1, not a 1.
Yep.
All right. So it's 11 on the die. So 16 altogether. Acclaimed Argrath as King of Pavis. I gain loyalty to Argrath. And 1d3 on my reputation. So that's a 3. Goodness, quite a bit here. Another 10% to battle. All right, that's easy. And 1d6. Oh, finally, some money. Yes.
Yes, it does look like you get war booty.
Yes.
The best kind of booty.
Right.
Well,
Calm down there.
it's predictable at least. So that's 4. So 400. Now is the L, that's lead?
That's Luna's,
Luna.
which is silvers.
Silvers. Okay, so 400
Yeah.
silver. All right. And I think that is it.
I believe that's you to you,
All
Jake.
right. I
Yes.
think I automatically go to the liberation of Pavis. And that +5, 14. So I fought with great glory, gain honor, add 10% to battle, and give myself distinctive scar and gain 1d3 reputation.
Chicks dig scars. Just saying.
That's right.
You were just on the wrong side of the battle, which meant you weren't recognized by Argrath in the battle and therefore don't get a special gift from the booty.
No, that's fine.
So we now have the history. So
Mm-hmm.
the next part of your character is how do you fit in the world? I'm taking a slight left turn from the order in the rule book just because I think it flows a bit better. So we're going to skip ahead in your characters' histories to the day where they undergo their initiation hero quest rituals. That is to say, that point during the storm season in 1625, so towards the end of the year, when you get to form the bond with one or more gods that in turn will enable you to get the abilities to shape your interactions with the runes that make up the very foundation of Glorantha. The gods, since the Great Compromise at the start of time, 1625 years ago, are of course now remote from the world and can therefore only act through people like you, their worshippers. But as a quid pro quo for that, you give them worship, succor, and capability of action. They give you the ability to, in some small scale, on the scale of godlyhood and herodom, at least, make your own way through the firmament, as it were. So with that, since I know people aren't necessarily that well au fait with the very broad and varied set of gods that Glorantha has available, what I think I will do is I'll go around the table, see if you can express what kind of primary actions or capabilities or temperament that you would describe your character with. And from there, we can explore down and see what might suit.
I guess the important thing to reiterate here is what we know about Sartorites, which are they're a very passionate people. They get riled up real easy, much like Orlanth does. That's sort of part of probably the makeup of most of the people of Sartar. So I think for Arion, my character, I think he is probably, if I had a affinity for him, he probably most ties close to air He's probably a man of movement. His history shows that. He's been to all sorts of different battles, running around trying to make this country, this nation, this world work, and fight back against the Lunars.
Absolutely. And I think, given his history, Arion does have a lot of typical Orlanthi traits. But I'm going to throw a few questions out there just to make sure that we pick him correctly. Probably the first question is, how important is honor to Arion?
I would say probably fairly high. His grandfather being a priest and having that sort of background of direct connection to the gods, understanding what they would lay down as both law and what is right, is probably something that he draws a fairly direct line from. He's probably tied to that in a lot of ways. And that includes honorable combat, and that includes, whatever the letter of the quote law would be. He's probably someone that follows it and helps reinforce it, I would imagine, too.
Okay. And leading on from that, if he was to rate honor versus family, which would score the higher?
I think family scores higher.
Okay. Yeah, with that, I think Arion is very likely to come out of his initiation rites, as it were, with the initiate of Orlanth stamp on him. What I was in my mind contrasting it with was with the death and battle god Humact. So had you said that honor was more important than family, then Humact might have been the better choice. But family is very important to Orlanth. So he just witnessed by the fact that his pantheon is 20, 30 deities large. It's not a small group. So yeah, I think that's good. We have something to work from there. I think I'm going to pop over to Jake next, just because I know he mentioned something caught my ears. So I'm interested to hear his pitch.
So Ventar, I think, is he's a hunter. So he spends his time out in the wilderness. He has to be patient, stealthy, spends most of his time alone. He's very honorable. His word is his bond. And I think that's what he focuses on, is his honor. Okay.
In which case, there is a particular god in the Orlanthi, or is listed in the Lightbringer pantheon in the new books, called Odela, known as the bear god.
Okay.
He's one that tends to concentrate on making sure that the clan has what it needs as far as the hunter-gatherer portion of the lifestyle goes. So he'll quite happily go out for weeks, if not seasons, and hunt down a particular prey. He's contrasted against the other option would probably be Yinkin, who's the god of cats. Now, to the Sartorites of Dragon Pass, large cats, as we've explored already, are somewhat akin to what the role that hunting dogs particularly have in human society.
Okay.
The difference with cats, of course, is that they are more clannish, they are more tribal. And I kind of get the sense that Ventar is more on the individual side of that spectrum.
No, I think that's pretty dead on.
Goody. So we have an Orlanthi, we have an Odela, and now for Dianis.
Well, considering she had the, I guess, more boring the more normal years compared to the others. She's very much of the earth. She is, when her mom died, it probably affected her very greatly. But she had this grandmother who was very strong, very much. She, even though the grandmother wasn't at the Battle of Grizzly Peak, but she fought, in the Holy Country and survived it, and then died gloriously on the walls of Boldhome, and then losing her mother. She feels like she has this legacy that she has to protect, that she has to carry on, because her mom was never able to do that. I see her as a survivor, as a fighter, but not like outward. So she's not a warrior in the traditional sense. She uses her skills and her abilities and her experiences as a source of strength, and is able to utilize those in various ways to move forward and move forward through life in whatever direction that ends up taking her. I see her being tied in a lot of ways to those that she does care about, because she has experienced loss so early. One of the things that came through was the devotion to a deity, so and to honor, and her hatred of the lunar. So there is all of that. She will fight. God help you if you cross her, because she will take you down. It may not be a direct attack. It could be an attack on different fronts. But when she cares about you and she loves you, she does that. She devotes herself to you.
Interesting. The way you've described it, you've hit a couple of key notes that makes the narrowing of choices remarkably easy almost. The one is Erythra, which is the herd mother. So if Dionysus was particularly concerned about the health and the well-being of the clan herds, that would be a valid choice. There is also, of course, Arnalda herself, the Earth Mother. What I found interesting in your pitch was that you practically quoted Arnalda word for word at one point. Arnalda is married in this particular geography to Orlanth. And as any married couple, they tend to have their slight differences of opinion. So Orlanth will go famously, violence is always an option. Arnalda classically responds with, but there's always another way.
That sometimes works better. And then follow it up with the violence.
Indeed. So I would suggest that Dianis consider going with Arnalda, as that feels to me the closest match.
I concur.
So having picked a prime cult, which your first hero quest off screen is your initiation rite, and this is not only when in the eyes of your clan, the Seth Noring, you take the step from being children to being adults, with the tying of yourselves to various runes and gaining runic affinities, that has a physical effect. So one of the effects of the initiation rites, or the initiation hero quest, is that you essentially go through the physical puberty stages all at once.
Well, that sounds exciting.
That sounds painful.
It's certainly confusing. to be fair, but it is literally you walk into the rite a child, you come out an adult in every sense of those words. And with that, of course, the next question logically then becomes, which runes do you end up with an affinity for? So scrolling back to step 3 and page 45, this now starts off with you each get to choose 3 elemental runes. Now, the elemental runes are essentially standalone. So they're the classic Aristotle type runes that Earth is created with a few tied in. So, for example, there's the moon rune, which is the element of the lunar goddess, where she sits in the sky.
So it looks like these 3 runes that we pick, one of them sort of starts out at the highest affinity, which would be 60%. The second's at 40%, and then the third is sort of a tertiary at 20%.
Yep. The way rune magic works is that through being initiated with a god, you get access to various rune spells from that god. In order to cast them, you typically need to roll against your runic affinity of a rune associated with that god that also matches the spell. So hence why I think it's better to pick gods first and then runes, because you can make them complement each other.
That makes sense.
Now, that's not to say that you couldn't, it's perfectly possible to have an Olanthe with 60% moon, 40% earth, and 20% water. But they would have mechanical difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely.
So starting off with Arion.
So for his 3, I have chosen air, earth, and water.
Air, earth, and water. That's a decent mix. Yep.
And in that sort of cascading scale. Jake, you're next.
I'm going to pick air, darkness, and water.
Ooh, nice. That certainly makes a lot of sense for Adela. And Dianis?
Dianis is going earth first,
Mm-hmm.
then air, because I think earth and air together make a tornado.
We do.
And third, I'm actually going to go darkness, because I think from her family history, the loss of her mother very early and the struggle that she probably had probably lends itself to that.
Indeed. And just to, it makes perfect sense. Darkness, of course, being the element of the underground world. So there's also a very distinct warm and surrounding safety sort of earth side to darkness. The two kind of share a side. So that said, 60, 40, 20, everybody also gets to add 10% to their air rune, just because you've grown up in Sartar, the land of the middle air.
Right.
You just have a natural affinity for it. The next thing to move on to are the power and form runes. Now, these come in opposed pairs, much like traits do in Pendragon. So the basic rule is that the affinities for the 2 runes in an opposed pair at all times add up to 100. What you need to do here is pick 2 pairs that will be 75-25 either way, and then all the rest are just 50-50 down the line. Just to quickly run through them, there's harmony versus disorder. Harmony typically in the being able to talk your way out of a conflict or de-escalate a conflict in some way, shape, or form. It's the major rune of the god of communication, Isaries, etc. So disorder, however, is all about putting yourself first, regardless of the strictures of society. It's a very selfish rune. Very much distinct, however, from the form rune of chaos, which is the just innate force that is eating Glorantha from without and within. Sometimes the two can be confused. There's stasis and movement, which are, I think, fairly self-explanatory. Truth and illusion. There's fertility and death. Ventar, Jake, how about you?
I have chosen beast and also truth.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
And I have, again, I think it falls pretty much right there. I have picked harmony and fertility.
Perfect. Absolutely. That's sort of the cookie cutter step.
Mm-hmm.
Next comes the tweaking, where you get to take 50 points and spread them however you want to amongst all the runes, including runes that you don't have anything in yet. Whilst people are thinking about that, just describe the final form runes of man beast is a very interesting post pair, because man and beast are not the only form runes that exist. There's also, at least immediately known, runes of dragon, plant, and chaos, I guess. Additional form runes, but they're not part of the opposed pair. So it's an interesting question. So how are we doing, Michael?
I spent my, as any good gamer, I spent my points immediately and swiftly. So I've upped my air rune by 15 points to 90 because I'd like to have a very strong tie to air. And then I've put some points into fire. So now I have 25 fire points. And then with the remaining portion, I put an extra 5 into water to balance my water and fire runes.
Perfect. And with an air rune that high, I will just mention that, as with any passion that is at 80 or above, likewise, a rune that's at 80 or above is capable of driving the character as much as the character drives the rune. So it basically gives me, the universe, the option of saying, in this particular situation, I would like you to roll your air rune and act accordingly.
That seems fair.
So, Jake.
Okay, I put 10 points in air to bring it to 80.
Mm-hmm.
20 points in darkness to bring that to 60, and then another 20 back into water. So that's 40.
Wonderful. And Heather?
Well, I went ahead and raised the fertility and harmony to 80. I upped my earth 75, air 65, darkness 35. I'm going to kind of stick with some of the known stuff, I think, for right now. It's just she's feeling really much in that vibe, so I'm not going to expand too much. I kind of want to play her pretty close to the image, the view,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I, for one, love the fact that there's plenty of 80 plus runes out there, because that just gives me a wonderful tool to add to the tool bag, as it were, of joy of helping tell this story. The next step that's coming up is the characteristics rolls. The as written is just a straight set of rolls against fixed characteristics. Since people have character concepts, I think maybe rolling 3 times, pick the one you want against the characteristics, feels like a way of not getting completely messed up by the rogue dice. It's 3d6 for everything apart from size and intelligence. Those two are 2d6 plus 6.
Okay. I kind of like the idea of rolling, let the fates decide.
Oh,
how
I mean,
well.
I'm certainly not going to stop just a straight roll through.
Yeah.
I
can't wait for our ability rolls. That'll be fantastic. So 3d6, and we'll see what we get.
Yep.
For the other two of you, I don't have any personal problem with, however you want to roll them. If you want to roll them straight down the line, that's fine with me. If you want to mix them up, that's fine. As Stefan mentioned, size and intelligence are the only two that are 2d6 plus 2. So those are the things to keep in mind here. Nice. Okay, that's not bad. And then it does look like here in the book they discuss on page, I believe this is 53. There are rune modifiers to certain characteristics. I know we'll get to that.
Oh,
I'm sure.
yes. Good catch.
Well, I don't have any 18s.
I got one.
Nice.
On my int, too.
Ooh,
she did
nice.
I'm not going to say I'm the brains of the operation, but
you might be.
Yes. Might be.
I'm sure we'll find out from Jake what he runed.
Having rolled the as Mike fortunately pointed out, because I always forget this step, so thank you, is the runic modifiers for characteristics, which basically is based off your elemental runes and depends on your primary and your secondary elemental runes. Gives you a choice. So your primary elemental rune will have a choice of 2 characteristics. You get to add +2 to that one. And then for your secondary elemental rune, you get to add +1 to a characteristics that corresponds to your secondary elemental. Though the one caveat is that charisma is essentially a catch-all, so you can only add 1 modifier to charisma. You can't add 3 to charisma, as it were.
Yeah, that makes sense. As my primary was air, and then my secondary was earth, my stats, modified stats from top to bottom are now, my strength is 18. My con is a 14. I put my highest ability in size, which is 17. My int is 14. I have a POW of 11. My dexterity is 14, and my modified charisma, because of my earth rune, is 16.
Ooh, nice. Yep, that's definitely a noticeable Orlanthy. There's no denying that. How's Ventar looking?
Because I have air, I put my 2 points in strength. Because I have darkness, I put a point into size. So my strength is 12, my con is 13, my size is 14, my int is 13, my POW is 11, my dex is 16, and then my charisma is 8.
Ooh. Yep, that sounds a daily to me. Pretty much down the line. That dex is going to come in handy in just a second. How about Dianis?
So Dianis, with her primary rune in earth, is going to get that +2 to her con and a +1 for strength from air as her secondary. So she is sitting at strength of 13, con of 14, size of 13, an int of 18, a POW of 10, a dex of 11, and a charisma of 15.
Yes, there is always another way.
And I will find it.
That's
Indeed.
right.
And I'm sure the rest of the party will come to love or rue that, as we'll no doubt see.
Oh, both. Absolutely both.
And so from there, and this is now where the glory of the Roll20 character sheet comes into play, because there are pages and pages of derived statistics in the rules that follow this, with lots of tables to work everything out. I'm just going to cherry pick a few broad categories just to highlight a few things that are important. So Starting off with magic points. Magic points are what drive spirit magic, which is the common magic that basically everybody has. It regenerates quite quickly, so you regain a quarter of your total magic points every 6 hours. In other words, you regain all your magic points in 24 hours. It's just a different way of stating the same formula. Yeah, so that starts off equal to your power, typically. Next up are your hit points, which there are essentially two kinds of that you need to be aware of. There is your overall hit point figure. So any wound you take gets deducted against your general hit points. When you reach 0 hit points, you are dead. But that's not the only hit point number that is on the character sheets or that is in the game, because each location also has hit points, which are at a rough fraction of your total hit points. So small limbs, arms, wings, that sort of thing tend to have a quarter. Larger limbs, legs, tails tend to be a third. Your chest tends to have half. Your head and abdomen or equivalents thereof tend to be counted as large limbs, so are on a third as well. The net result of all of that is that the total hit points of all of your limbs is far larger than your total hit points. If somebody comes up and breaks both your legs and then eviscerates you, even if your chest and head are totally undamaged, you've probably taken enough damage to die.
And for reference, for anybody following along in the book, we are on page 54 and 55 right now. So that's where the lovely, lovely tables are.
I do like that this sheet auto-calcs. A lot of that is really helpful.
Yes.
Yes, it is, especially for starting, for people who are new to the game system. It makes life a lot easier. From there, I'm going to really just jump over to one more thing, which is strike rank. Strike rank is a particularly RuneQuestian characteristic in that it determines when you go in a combat sequence. Other games have more random ways of determining order, but RuneQuest is highly deterministic, and it's all about strike rank. So a combat round is 12 seconds and therefore divided into 12 strike ranks. It is exceedingly rare to see anybody actually writing down that 1 second equals 1 strike rank, but it just feels like the numbers work that way. And in the starter pack, they even ship a strike rank tracking chart to help. So no matter what you do, whether it's a physical activity, whether it's a spell casting activity, some mix thereof, movement eats up strike ranks. And when you reach 12, you're out to strike ranks for the round, and you either have to roll over for several rounds if you're trying to do something particularly big, or you just have to start again. And strike ranks are very simply a measure of how fast you can do something, how far you can reach, and how far whatever you're using can reach. So at this point, the character will have 3 strike rank numbers. There is a size strike rank, and the larger you are, the smaller that number is, because the larger you are, the further you can reach. In a situation where you're moving against each other, the larger person gets their knuckles into the other guy's forehead faster. Having said that, there's then also your dexterity strike rank, which is how fast or how agile you are. If you can move fast and react faster, then you obviously go faster. So high dex gives a smaller dex strike rank. Then you have your base strike rank, which is merely the sum of those two. So overall, between your size and your dex, when is the absolute earliest that you can do something physical. And then there's the third factor is each weapon type has a strike rank associated with it as well. So a 7-foot 2-handed long spear has a strike rank of 0 as a weapon strike rank, because you put 7 foot of reach on top of anything is probably about as far out as you're going to go. Whereas your typical hand-to-hand or foot-to-hand or whatever flavor you want to use has a strike rank of, I believe, 5. Might be 4, but I believe 5. So typically the weapon strike rank is a 0 to 5 additive. Rune spells all take effect on strike rank 1. Spirit magic depends on how many magic points you put into it. It's the number of magic points minus 1 is the number of strike ranks that any particular spirit magic spell takes. So I think that's really all I wanted to cover from that section, which leads into the next portion, which is where we get into the more nitty-gritty of everything else, which is picking your profession. Your occupation has a large number of choices. So pages 64 through 70-ish, minus a couple of pages of artwork. So
I do love all of the artwork in the RuneQuest books, and it's half the reason why I buy most of them is because the art look is really cool.
The book is spectacular, and I will admit I am a fan of particularly the mythological artwork that's come out recently. It's very different from the classical Gloranthan artwork that used to be, but it's just gorgeous. So with everything, before we get into picking professions, however, I do notice there's one more thing we should do, which is the Homeland Cultural Skill bonuses off of page 60. At this point, the character sheets will have calculated your various skill group bonuses, such as they are, on the skill page. And culturally, there are a few additions to that. So since everybody is Sartorite, you all get +5 to ride, +5 to dance, +10 to sing. You all have speak own language at 50, and you get to add speak other language trade talk. You might have it already, or if basically you add 10% to whatever's there, even if there isn't anything. You have 25% in customs. You get to add 20% to farming and 10% to herding, and 15% to spirit combat.
And it looks like most of them are on the sheet are right down the left-hand side.
Yes. Spirit combat, I think, is up in the sort of the middle. There is then some cultural weapon proficiency changes. And here I have to warn about the sheet, because it might not be completely clear how it does the weapons pieces. The place to change these values is on the combat portion of the skills section. So on the top right of the skill sections, you have your melee weapons. And that's what we modify. So dagger gets +10%, battle axe +10%, one-handed spear +10%, broadsword +15%, composite bow +10%, down the missile weapons in the section below. Likewise, javelin +10%. And then finally, down in the shield section, medium shield +15 and large shield +10.
I'm going to look at my occupation. I have a feeling I know what it'll be, but
I was going to say, since his father was a priest, he has the option of choosing the priest package, even though he doesn't qualify as a priest himself. I suspect that Ventar is just going to take all-out hunter.
Oh, yeah.
The interesting one, as it were, is Diana's, because there's quite a few choices in that.
I'll admit, I was entertaining, kind of playing with the idea of taking Noble.
Absolutely.
Considering where she's fallen in terms of her stats and just the general feel of her at this point.
Did she meet up or do anything in the Holy Country in the History generation down with Queen Salmisra?
No, she acclaimed Agrath as King of Pavis, but she unfortunately did miss the whole with Queen. But I mean, with her choice, with her devotion to deity, her honor, her +3 to reputation and +15 to battle, and the loyalty to Argrath, almost all of that feels like it would fall in with that, and her stats being, especially her 18 int and her 15 charisma, really feel like they would kind of fall into that whole nobility, diplomacy first and then destroy them after kind of process that she has in her head.
Yes, no problem with that whatsoever. That makes perfect sense. So that then brings us full circle, and we can now fill in the initiation portions of your skills, as it were, because that too has one final effect. So first of all, as one of the results of the initiation ritual, you each get 3 rune points to start off with, over on the magic section on the front. Rune points is what's used to power rune magic, i.e. magic that directly manipulates the runes as granted by the gods. They are regained typically through devotional activity to the god that they are tied to. So worship, typically at the bigger the temple, the bigger the ceremony, the better. But that might be once in a season kind of event.
Sure.
They're definitely a pseudo-rare resource. So page 74-ish onwards, in your cult section, you'll have a skills section with skill adds, and also a section of cult-specific rune spells that are available to you. There is also a set of 7 or 8 so-called common rune spells that everybody basically has access to, which are of decent utility, but in fairness, the interesting rune spells fall under the cult-specific stuff. And once that's in place, we're basically done with the generation. We have a group ready to experience the wonders of the world.
So I pulled a bit of an audible. My grandfather was a priest, and so was my father. But I'm going to say that the local cult, maybe perhaps someone within the temple themselves, thought, given that I didn't exactly make up what they felt was the proper fit of a priest, they sent me to more of a martial area of my growth. And so I took warrior as the occupation, and specifically the cult of Orlantha Adventurous.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of his little sub tie-in to go see the world and move about like the wind. I don't think Aaron wants to be, we'll just say, chained to the steps of a church and practice and spread incense around and bless people. He's a little bit more interested in seeing the world.
And certainly what I recall of his history events over the last 4 or so years tends to bear that out, between the Holy Country and Pavis.
Mm-hmm.
He's been pretty much east to west all over at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So functionally, what, I guess, other than the last sort of bits and pieces, what less is there to do?
Character generation, that's basically it. There's quite a bit of minutiae, but as your Glorantha will vary, that amount of minutiae can be tailored. So the as written history, for instance, deliberately tries to place characters near this, not at the center of the action, but near the center of the action of the major historical events that occurred during their lifetime. But it's perfectly valid to essentially, as a generation work, to say this group is from a clan that was not so much involved in the more global politics and just basically had normal years throughout all of that. Or maybe had incursions of raiding lunars just to build up that hatred of lunars.
Ah, yes.
The thing to remember about all the tables and all the steps in the generation process is that it's a pro forma generation process. It's not this is what everybody needs to go through.
Yeah, I think there's some benefit, especially for the reason why I wanted us to go through, because it was really our first time building RuneQuest characters, and there were some very important touchstones as we go along in the history, and to understand this is how the world was built, in effect, from what your grandparents understood. Yes, there are some things here that they learned about that we needed to learn about, because it's not just another fantasy setting. That's not what this is. And so I think it was important to ground the experience in it. So I think what I'll do then is I will sign off here, and we'll see what happens the next time we get together for RuneQuest. So thank you all so much for joining us. So Heather, if you would.
Thanks, everybody. This has been a lot of fun. I have never cracked open one of the books, so really going through this, it seems like a lot, but I'm very excited to see where this character might go.
Indeed.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your support.
Jake?
Bye, everybody. I'm really excited to play this. I'm really stoked for it. Hope to see you in Glorantha.
And then, of course, if you would, Seven, just say goodbye to the innumerable amount of teaming fans you have now.
All number of hands of them, indeed. No, it has been an absolute pleasure to guide you through the short-term history of Glorantha, and I am absolutely hoping and looking forward to getting to understand what these proto-heroes have in front of them as they embark upon their Gloranthan adventures.
Whatever they have in front of them, it certainly won't be calm or quiet. I have a feeling. So thank you all for joining us, and to everyone, have a good day or night wherever you are, and we'll see you soon.